Hello, Quality Strength Nutrition class. So, quick reminder of what we talked about last time. We were sort of giving you the overview of the human body and how it reacts to external stimuli. So we talked a little bit about how you have these trillions of cells under your control. They react and communicate to each other in the language of hormones, and we get them to do different things based on external stimuli and signals coming from our brains. So things like food, light, sleep, stress, joy, activity, all have an impact. Today we're going to be talking specifically about one message that your body uses. It's called insulin. So insulin is a hormone. It's an anabolic building hormone, okay? So it builds stuff. We'll talk about what stuff in a moment. So insulin, its primary job is to remove sugar from the blood where it is toxic. So sugar is toxic in the blood, and it stores it. It's going to store it as usable energy in one of a few different places: liver, muscle tissue, or fat cells. Insulin also stops the use of fat as an energy source. So really important to remember that one. Okay, so why do we need to know about insulin? Well, if you're taking this class, chances are we might have a little bit of excess body fat to lose. So it really comes in handy to know what are we doing to tell our body to store fat in the first place. One of the big players in telling your body to store fat is the hormone insulin. Okay? And here's why. This goes for all mammals, not just for humans, but for all mammals. Anytime we have an excess of carbohydrate or sugars in the blood, well, starch turns into a sugar, let me put it that way. Starchy carbohydrates, sugars, turn into a sugar in the blood, and then we have to store them someplace. We have to get them out of the blood because they're toxic there. So it can go like this. So we take the insulin takes the sugar out of the bloodstream. It can store some of it in the liver, but the liver has limited storage capacity, okay? The insulin can also take some of that sugar and store it in the muscle tissue. Around each one of our muscle fibers, we have a little gelatinous area called the sarcoplasm, and we can store some of the sugars in there. Depending on how much muscle you have, you might have more or less storage capacity in the muscle, but that also has a limited storage capacity. Now beyond that, if we still have more sugars to store for later use, what your body's going to do is this really cool chemistry experiment where it's going to take the sugars, turn them into a triglyceride, and store them in the fat cells, okay? Now the fat cells are pretty cool. They have almost unlimited storage capacity, which means that you can just keep storing and storing and storing there. So, things to remember about insulin, okay, it's a storage hormone. If we get too much sweets, too many sweets or starchy things, breads, cakes, that kind of thing, beyond what we can use, beyond what can be stored in the liver, beyond what can be stored in the muscles, that is going to turn to fat, period. There's no two ways about it. Excess sugars are going to be turned into fat and stored as fat on the body. Now, the other piece about this to remember when we're talking about hormonal response and external stimuli, giving us our first clue as to whether or not our cells should react in a certain way. I get a lot of questions about what about fake sweeteners, okay? And not just, like Splenda and Equal, but the more natural fake sweeteners like stevia is one of them, or one of the sweeteners that's maybe advertised as low glycemic like agave nectar. Now the problem with sweeteners in general is that they're still sweet. So here's what happens. When your tongue tastes something sweet, that is an external stimuli. That's one of the first things, one of the first warning signs that your body has that you have sugar incoming. Now, your tongue doesn't know the difference whether it's a 0-calorie sweetener or not, whether it's actual sugar or fake sugar. So you get an insulin response anyways, okay? So Your brain says, oh my gosh, we've got sugar incoming, I can taste it, I can smell it, we've got something really sweet. Insulin, release. We don't want that toxic sugar hanging out in our bloodstream. We want it stored as usable energy. So insulin releases, and it's waiting, and it's waiting, and it's waiting. And typically insulin will wait around for about 2 hours to do its job and store what it needs to store for usable energy. Only problem is there's no actual sugar coming in. So there's nothing to store. That would be fine and dandy, except for most of the time when people are drinking like a diet soda, for example, they're trying to lose fat. And while insulin is working, it stops the use of fat as an energy source. Stops the use of fat as an energy source, okay? Really important to understand that. So it's a building hormone, it stores things. That's its whole job. How frustrated would you be if you were trying to pack things away like in a closet and somebody else was trying to unpack while you were packing? Doesn't work, right? Okay, so insulin has the same job where it's a storage or packing hormone. So even if there's no actual sugar coming in, let's give you a quick scenario here so it's easy to understand. Say that I am on a major starvation diet because I want to lose all the weight, okay, which I don't recommend. But let's say I'm not eating anything all day long, but I'm allowing myself to drink diet soda because after all, it has 0 calories. So what's the harm, right? So I'm drinking this diet soda and my brain keeps thinking, oh, we've got all this sugar that's about to be dumped into our bloodstream. Insulin, go. Insulin, go. So every time I have a sweet, sugary diet soda, I am stopping myself from using the stored fat on my body for about 2 hours, okay? So even if my body really needs it, even if I've got no calories coming in, it's still gonna stop it because insulin can't work and allow fat to be unstored both at the same time. So that's a really important thing to understand about insulin. So we do talk a lot about controlling sweetness, controlling the amounts of sugars coming in. I'm by no means a proponent of a low-carb diet. I still believe in having plenty of carbohydrates to fuel your activity, and that will vary depending on what your activity is. But really important to understand what the body does when it has this external stimuli of sweet-tasting things and or actual sugar and or actual starches, which turn rapidly into sugars once they hit your system. Okay? So that's the lesson for today. If you want to lose fat, stay out of the sweets.